Well, today the US government has announced its decision to transition its role, its stewardship of the unique identifier system, to transition that stewardship to the global community. We believe this is a historic moment. We believe the US decision is a very important decision, and it's a decision that calls upon all of us to show our readiness to build mechanisms that are global, that are inclusive, that have governments, private sector, civil society, and all internet users participate openly in designing how the internet unique identifier system, how the world will have true accountability delivered to it. We believe this is possible, and we invite everyone to participate in this process. Many people will ask today, what does this mean and what are the changes ahead? Well, let me start by saying that what we do today and what the US government has done stays unchanged. What our sister organizations in the internet technical community do remains the same, unchanged. We all continue. What will change is how will the entire community, the global community, as equal partners across all sectors, including governments, have the confidence that we are performing our functions in an accountable, transparent way according to the wishes of the global community. That role was in the hands of the US government and will now be transitioned. Now, it won't transition immediately. The security and stability of the unique identifiers that underpin the technical infrastructure of the internet are our #1 priority. It's everyone's priority. And we will not do anything that will change the unblemished record of administering these functions that we have held over the last 15 years. Instead, this is a moment of triumph. This is a moment where the multi-stakeholder model shows that it is mature and ready, and we no longer need the stewardship of one government. We now need the world's stewardship to come and ensure that our functions are performed as requested by the global community.
Well, the U.S. government is planning to relinquish control over the body that manages internet names and addresses. It's a move that's expected to bring more international cooperation over the management of the World Wide Web, but it's also making some American businesses nervous. Elizabeth Pran is joining us now to tell us more about why it has some folks rattled.
Hi, Uma. Well, the Commerce Department has been overseeing the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, or ICANN, for almost a decade. ICANN maintains, administers domain names as well as IP addresses, among other web requirements across the world. That, however, is scheduled to expire next year, and it appears U.S. officials will give up its oversight role and let the contract run out. The job may be taken on by groups that lead private businesses as well as other interested parties, not just multiple governments. Recently, however, critics have been raising concerns that other countries may try to take control.
I think that's kind of what I'm seeing with the internet. It's almost as if rather than admit that we've made some stupid and even some unconstitutional mistakes in invasion of privacy, let's clean up our act, but let's not give away the whole process.
Democratic lawmakers such as Senate Commerce Committee Chairman Jay Rockefeller are praising the decision, releasing a statement, and in part it reads, "Since 1998, the U.S. has been committed to transitioning management of the Internet's domain name system to an independent entity that reflects the broad diversity of the global Internet community. NTIA's announcement today is the beginning of that process." While the decision is historic, Internet users should notice really no changes if anybody at home is concerned. Uma?
I want to get to Pat Buchanan, who is here in our studios, because he's here to weigh in on several things, particularly the development about what's happened with the Internet now in the United States, giving up its power on this front. What's your reaction to this?
It's very negative. I think you're transferring the custody of this immensely important function from the United States to an international community which is susceptible to and could cave into pressures and from places like China and others in terms of what they do. I think far better that the United States do it themselves. And I agree with Mike Huckabee. Look, they made some mistakes with NSA, but you don't do because of that out of guilt. You transfer authority over something like this. I'd prefer my own country to have it. I'm more of a nationalist than a globalist.
Do you think this is, again, underscoring a weakness with this administration and the continued sort of a pattern that we've been witnessing?
I think Barack Obama sees himself as much a citizen of the world as he does a citizen of the United States. And I think he has far more confidence in globalist institutions than I do or we should. And I think there's no evidence that the United States has not handled this function properly and well. And I think there's no reason why we should transfer it to another globalist body.
The Commerce Department announcing on Friday plans to possibly give up its remaining control over the technology that manages internet names and addresses, a major move that relinquishes America's unique control over a system it invented and could lead to serious disruptions as well as security and reliability issues in the future. Joining us now, talk about it, Ellen Ratner, Bureau Chief, Talk Radio News Service, Fox News contributor. Brad Blakeman joins us, former Deputy Assistant to President George W. Bush. Let me start with you, Brad, because you called it in this column 4 years ago. You wrote about it, and you argued that America, created this thing, why hand it over to others? But let me challenge you for a moment. Is it fair or wise to have just one country, really, the United States, control what has become a powerful, pervasive, global form of communication?
Yes, it's in our national interest. Greg, look, you know and I know that our country is attacked cyberly through the internet tens of thousands of times a day, whether it's the private sector or the government sector. The one leverage we have, better us than anybody else, to control the access to the internet, because if you give it to a third party, in this case the UN, the UN is absolutely incompetent in every area of governance, and now we're going to hand them the Holy Grail. There's never been an accusation that us as the inventors of the internet have somehow controlled the internet, didn't provide access. As a matter of fact, we gave it to the world. It's our technology. The government paid for it. We should control it.
Ellen, why give it up? America, after all, is a beacon of freedom. What better insurance than America to protect freedom on the internet? Not to mention, as Brad argues here, our security.
First of all, it's absolutely a fantasy to think that we actually control this. Other countries are going to come up with their .cx's or whatever they want to do. And so that the fact that we have control is crazy to begin with, because we really don't. So why not take the political PR positive of it and say we're going to make it, free and fair through the United Nations, and then know what we can't do anyhow, which is we can't control
Don't you worry about other less honorable nations that are ascendant that may diminish the value of the internet for their own purposes?
They're already doing that. I travel a lot, and there are certain countries where you're not allowed to use Skype. So everybody uses things like TunnelBlick, etc., to get around it. There's all ways around the internet already. There's these dark economies. There's unfortunately things that are illegal going on. So
this will make it even easier to conduct those.
Not if it's through the United Nations, and I do cover the United Nations.
Oh, the United Nations couldn't run a food drive. We learned that, didn't we?
I'm sorry.
They absconded with billions of dollars.
Listen, I am not going to just say that the United Nations can't do anything. We cover the United Nations. They do a pretty good job at a lot of things, actually. And I think it's a good corrupt, PR move of the United States to say, hey, we're throwing this open, because it's open anyway. It's the technology is already there, and other people are already using it.
All right, Brad, critics have, and I've heard them say this, that the handover is sort of driven by a kumbaya mentality of President Obama. Let's show everybody how inclusive and sharing we can be. And that would forget the potential danger. Do you think he's being naive?
I do. And back in 2010, when I wrote my op-ed in Newsmax, I made it quite clear what his intentions were. I laid it out in chapter and verse, giving the proper evidence and argument as to why this is so dangerous. But the president was in full appeasement and apology mode at that time, and he's carrying it through today to somehow think that something that we invented, that we're protecting. And you just heard it from Ellen, the mischief that's created by others. You're only now going to it's going to be open season for countries like China and Russia and others to continue.
Let me throw
one attempts
Ellen,
to keep
I want
it
you to react to what Brad wrote. I'm sure you read his column way back
I did.
in 2010. Let's put it up on the screen. As far as I'm concerned, America is still the last best hope for a more peaceful and prosperous world, and our president should not be looking for ways to weaken us. Rather, his job is to work to strengthen us and protect our nation's greatest asset, our people's creativity and ingenuity. My, that's a powerfully good argument, isn't it, Ellen?
It's a great argument, and the fact is that by the president turning over domain names to the United Nations, he's not going to change one bit of creativity, not one bit of ingenuity. It's all going to be there.
Brad?
That's nonsense. The fact is that when you have to go to a third party, and a third party that has a history of failure and inattentiveness to what really matters in this world, you're going to let them decide who gets a domain name, who gets an IP address? No. We invented it. We control it. It's good leverage for us, and it protects our national interest.
Last word, Ellen.
To bring up a bad analogy, you know, it's the United Nations actually through their conventions that tell us which way planes are flying in this world. They do a lot of things that are pretty good.
All right, Ellen Ratner and Brad Blakeman again. Very prescient column all the way back in 2010. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.